This is Pace Per Mile. For more on the latest news, reviews, check out pacepermile.com. Like us on Facebook and join in the conversation on Twitter. With host Chris Nicholas, this is Pace Per Mile.
Welcome back to Pace Per Mile. I'm Chris Nicholas. Joining me in this segment of the show, Brady Murray. You probably have heard of him. He is somebody that's tackling races, not for himself, but for others. It really goes personal with Brady. Brady, how are you today, and welcome to Pace Per Mile.
Doing great. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks for being on. Obviously, we still have to go on, and I think your story is one that we want to tell because we certainly know multi-sport athletes. We know people that probably have adopted a child. We know people that have had children that have been affected with a sickness or disease. You have one of those stories that you have taken something that has happened to you personally, transformed it into something that you can become stronger from, and then also help others. So take us back to kind of when it started and Down syndrome came into your life with your child.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we had just moved into a new home, and we were very excited about the home, but most excited about our newborn son that we were expecting any day. My wife will always say that it was because we moved right when she was expecting that put her into labor. And so it was July of 2007 that morning came when we rushed to the hospital to deliver our firstborn son. When we got to the hospital, it was it was a great experience, as you can imagine, being able to prepare to have a child enter into your life. The delivery went great, and before I knew it, I had my newborn son right in front of me, and he just looked perfect. Everything just couldn't be better. Taking pictures and just visiting with Andrea, and she did such a wonderful job. It was about that time that the doctor came and grabbed me and put his arm around me and just said in a very quiet voice, he said, "Brady, I have something I need to tell you." He said, I think that your son has Down syndrome. And this was the first that I had heard of that. It wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a good thing. It was just different. It was a different perspective. There's a lot of emotions that had filled my mind. A lot of emotions as I shared this with my wife. Where it really hit home, I think, was that night. I went to dinner with my father. It was just he and I, and we were walking into the restaurant. And as we walked into the restaurant, there was a couple, I would guess in their early 60s, that was walking out of the restaurant. And right behind them was what was very obvious was their daughter. And she was about 40, and it was clear that she had Down syndrome. And it was there that it really hit me, that I said, you know what, this is different. My perspective on what the future was going to be like is different. And again, wasn't a bad thing, wasn't a good thing. It was just different. From there, things got incredibly better, and just couldn't have been better. And over the last 5 years, as I've got to know my son and got to know others with Down syndrome and understand Down syndrome more clearly, I consider this truly one of my greatest blessings, to be able to say that I'm a father of a son who has Down syndrome.
For those that do not have children with Down syndrome, Nash is a very active child. He's up and around. He's hanging out with Dad. Tell us a little bit about his activities these days.
Nash is just like any other 5-year-old. He's very active. He loves to be creative. He's very curious about how things work, and he gets into trouble just like anybody else. Nash also, though, is very special in the sense that he connects with people extremely well. We can't go into a store without Nash making a new friend, and I truly believe that he brings out the best in people, and that's a gift that he has, is his ability to connect with people and bring out the best in them. But at the end of the day, he has his good days and his bad days just like any other 5-year-old, and again, we're just very fortunate to have him in our family. Is
it a challenge to have a Down syndrome child?
No different than my 7-year-old or my 3-year-old. I think just being a dad and being a parent as a whole creates its challenges. There's challenges that my 7-year-old presents that I'd never have to face with Nash, and there's challenges that having a son who has Down syndrome there's challenges that creates that I don't have with my other two children. And so, sure, there's challenges, but nothing unique or out of the ordinary that, I feel that is any extra burdensome or more difficult.
Your goal with Rods Racing, in one sentence, is to help those children with Down syndrome. Talk about Rods Racing.
Yeah, that's very near and dear to my heart. I'll give you a little bit of a background. From a triathlon standpoint, I'd competed, started in 2009 and just started with some local races. I'd never considered myself a competitive triathlete. I'd tried a 70.3 distance and finished, but almost killed myself in the effort. And I'd always thought about attempting to do a full Ironman someday, but the task was just extremely daunting. I mean, just the thought of I just couldn't get my arms around that. And so that's why in November of 2011, when I was introduced to the organization called Reese's Rainbow, that's actually an adoption advocacy program or an organization. It's an organization that helps orphaned Down syndrome children find families. And so when I found this, it really hit home, because as a father of a son with Down syndrome, seeing children that are actually orphaned that don't have a family, that struck home. I learned that it's common in many cultures that when a child is born with a disability, they're immediately put into an orphanage, and that's where that child will stay for the first 4 to 5 years of their life. At that point in time, they are transferred to an adult mental institution where they're there with other adults who have disabilities. It's not uncommon for these children at a very young age to pass away simply because of the harsh circumstances in which they are facing. So when I heard that, I thought, man, I can't just sit back and let this happen. And so I started researching, and I found that there was hope. The hope is that there literally are hundreds of families throughout the United States ready and willing to adopt these children. The only thing standing in their way was the financial means. It costs on average $30,000 to $40,000 for a family to adopt a child internationally. And literally that was the only thing standing in the way. And so I thought to myself, if money's the only thing standing in the way, I can go and do something about that. And so my wife and I went to work. We started small. We decided to tell our parents that we're not buying them Christmas presents that year, and we're donating that money to a child that we chose by the name of Eli that was in Lithuania at the time. Eli's account quickly grew, and miracles took place. Within 30 days, there had been $20,000. Within 30 days after that, a family came forward and committed to adopt Eli. I'm very happy to say that he's doing wonderful. He's been home since October, and he is just growing as you can only imagine a child would do in a loving family. So that's kind of where it started, and that's where this idea of racing for these children was created. I thought to myself, I never thought I could do an Ironman, and the reality is I couldn't do a full Ironman for myself, but I had no doubt that I could do one for one of these kids. That's why I went to work. And that's ultimately what started Rods Racing, is just that desire to do a full Ironman for an orphan child, or for many orphan children.
And do you find that it consumes, in a positive way, a majority of your time? Are you always looking for that new idea still yet today? Absolutely.
What started as just simply an idea of, hey, I'm going to go do a full Ironman. And that was actually about a year ago, a little over a year ago. In that year's time, it has grown, and we currently have 48 athletes that have committed their race season in 2013. Every one of them is committed to raise at least $1,000 for the children that we're racing for. And in the last 12 months, or a little over 12 months, we've raised over $160,000. And we have 6 children who have been adopted or who have a family committed to adopt them. And so it's definitely at the forefront of my mind, and I'm constantly seeking out opportunities to be able to help these children in any way that I can.
And hopefully our listening audience will hear this and be able to react, even if it's just, hey, you know what, we need to make a donation. Hopefully others will spread the word And maybe, just maybe, there's a family out there that is willing to adopt. I would assume, and I want to go back just for a few moments. Obviously, adopting a child at any age can be tough for parents. Some think it is great, easy. You know what? We need to do this. But for those that are, I guess, on the fence, what do you say to them? What do you say to them when it's a Down syndrome child and they know, hey, you know, I have no idea what I'm getting into? What's the process like?
You know, I've visited with a lot of families that are what you know, as you had said, are kind of on the fence and are considering taking that plunge of adopting a child, and in particular adopting a child who has special needs. And the advice, very simply, that I can give to them is do whatever it is that you do when you make life-changing decisions. And when it's all said and done, just listen to those feelings that you have and follow those feelings. And I promise, if you do so, that regardless of how big of a challenge it may seem like, regardless of what your neighbors or your family might think, I promise, if you feel those feelings and you follow those feelings, that this truly will be one of, if not the greatest blessing that you could ever experience. And I can only say that from experience, that I have no doubt that, again, being a father of a son with Down syndrome has been a tremendous blessing in my life and my family's life.
Do you mind taking for a few moments? I'd like to go a little bit more in depth with the orphans that have been adopted. Obviously, you had a chance to work with some of these families, or all of the families. With Eli, for instance, tell us about him and that story. Yeah,
that was a very unique story because he was the first, you know. And all I knew of Eli was just a very small, little grainy picture of this little boy. And there were literally hundreds of other children that we were choosing from and trying to find the one that we wanted to raise money for. And I remember the night very clearly that I was looking over these children, and for about a week, my wife and I every night would jump on Reese's Rainbow and look at these children, and we'd just cry because our hearts went out to them, and it was so hard to try and decide. But there was one night, it was just me, and I was looking through these kids, and I came across Eli's picture, and his eyes just spoke to me, and I just had a very special feeling in my heart that this is the kid that I'm supposed to go race for, and this is the kid that I'm supposed to raise money for. And I knew it, and it was scary. It was a big undertaking, but again, I followed those feelings, those promptings that came to my heart, and like I said, the rest is history. Miracles literally took place in order for Eli to get that $20,000. And then you get that money, and you just don't know. You wonder, you know, is somebody really going to come forward and adopt Eli? And sure enough, I got an email from a mom that said that she was thanking me for what I had done, and that she had just come across Eli's picture and his story, and that she was going to be his mom. And Jamie, Eli's mom, and Eli's family have become very dear friends of mine, and we stay in close contact. I haven't had the chance to meet Eli just yet. That day will come very soon. They're over in another part of the country from where I am, but I can't wait to actually hold that little boy in my arms and get to meet him for the first time.
And you have a total of 5 adoptions that have been made, or is that 4?
There's 6 that are either pending or have been finalized. Okay. Another one that I'd like to share with you is very unique. As you know, I had the chance to race in the Ironman World Championship this last year, and I'll forever be grateful for Ironman for giving me that opportunity to not just race in that race, but more importantly, get to tell my story on their NBC broadcast and be able to share my story with the world. But it's interesting, the little girl that I got to race for in Kona, I actually have met this little girl. I was in Peru last June. I went down there with Utah State University, the Huntsman School of Business, and we were doing a little project with some microloans with some of the students. And I took a few extra days apart from this project and stayed down there and actually sought out an orphanage that was about 4 hours north of where I was, and took a little journey up there. It was a tiny little village and a very tiny little orphanage. There were 32 kids running around, and went there in search of seeing if it happened that there was a child there that had Down syndrome. And sure enough, there was. Her name is Maylee. And this little girl just stole my heart. When I was there, she has the most gorgeous smile. She's 4 years old, going on 5. And I talked with the director of the orphanage and just asked her. I said, well, Maylee's one of the older children here. What's the status? And she said, I don't know. She said, all the other kids get adopted. She said, but I've never had a child who has Down syndrome be here, and I don't know what will happen because I fear that she won't be adopted. And I said, I think I can do something about that. And I decided right there that I was going to race Kona for her. And so from June through October, all of my training and all of my focus was to be able to race and raise money for Maylee. And when I finished the race in Kona, I had a huge surprise waiting for me at the finish line. And some of you may have seen this on the broadcast, but MyList, the presenting sponsor for the Ironman this last year, presented me with a check for $20,000 that went to cover the adoption costs for Maylee. Ironically enough, within 48 hours, I got a phone call from a family that had committed to move forward and adopt Maylee. And so, as I've said, there are many, many families out there ready and willing to adopt these children. They just need a little bit of help, and we've proven that many times now.
You've learned, and I have as well, is that all you have to do is ask, but sometimes it takes, you have to show that you're out there doing the effort, but really it starts with asking, right?
Absolutely. There's no doubt. There's so many good people in this world, and ironically enough, 18 months ago, I didn't even know that there was children in this situation, and I'm a father of one of these children, for crying out loud. And so it's just simply sharing the story, and when you share the story, people's hearts will be touched, and if people will follow those promptings that they feel in their heart to be able to help in any way that they can, whether that's financial or just simply sharing the story, or whether it's actually adopting one of these kids. If an individual will follow those promptings, there is no doubt that, again, miracles will take place.
It's not easy, though. You are pushing yourself. You've got a race calendar this year. You've got 3 half Ironmans. Is that correct?
Yep.
And combine these 48 other athletes. I mean, that's a lot of races that are out there. And how many races combined did we had talked off the air a little bit? How many races between all 48 athletes?
As a total, we'll do over 225 races throughout the United States, as well as Europe this year, between our athletes.
So it's not just it's not somebody saying, "Hey, you know what? Give me money because I want to help Down syndrome children." I'm out there racing. You're out there racing. He's out there, and she's out there racing, and you're making things happen. And tell us a little bit about the awareness side when you're tackling races. And we do hear it a lot that this person's running for this charity and that charity, but is it tough out there? How much of a challenge is it, not only physically but also emotionally on you?
There's no doubt. Probably the biggest challenge, at least from a physical standpoint, as well as mental, at least in getting ready for these races, doesn't actually come on race day. It comes about 4:30 in the morning when that alarm goes off, and you got to go jump in a cold pool and swim for an hour and then go either bike or run after that. That's the hard part, and there's a lot of things that motivate people. There's a lot of incredible athletes that are out there, both professional and amateur, that have found a niche and found a way to be able to do that. And I found, at least in my own personal world, that it's pretty easy to push that snooze button if you're out there racing for yourself. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot more difficult to push that snooze button if you know that there's a child that's waiting for you and that's dependent upon you getting up and getting to the gym. And so there's no doubt that there's an incredible, it's hard. I've been fortunate to have 2 other kids, my beautiful daughter, Brinley, who's 7, and my son, Nash, my little buddy, who's 5, and my other son, Ridge, who's 3. And so there's a lot going on between work and everything else, and trying to find time for the training. It can be tough sometimes.
But you're not alone either. There are numerous ways that people can help. They can volunteer, they can support your sponsors, obviously they can donate, and as well they can become a adoptive family. Let's go through those options if you've got a second here. From your standpoint, what's the biggest focus that you want right now? What are you looking for right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. This year, we had another miracle take place. Earlier this year, we had an incredible sponsor come forward. The famous Idaho Potatoes, the Idaho Potato Commission came forward, and they agreed to match 2 full grants for a child. They've agreed to donate $50,000 to Racing for Orphans with Down Syndrome, which will go directly to our children that we're racing for, as a matching grant for all of our athletes for the money that they raise. And so probably the biggest focus right now, and just out of this generosity that's come from Idaho Potatoes, is to be able to max out that $50,000 matching grant. And so every one of our athletes, all 48 of our athletes out there, have all committed to be able to raise money for these children and to try and get to this $50,000 mark. Year to date, we've raised just over $18,000. And so a great thing, and one of the best ways that people can become involved, is regardless of whether you have a child with Down syndrome or even have a connection to Down syndrome, it would be wonderful to join our cause and dedicate your racing season to be a part of Racing for Orphans with Down syndrome. All of our athletes that have committed to raise to become part of our team, they all receive a racing jersey, whether that's a singlet or the actual jersey and the shorts, that are great. 2XU has come forward and helped us in providing some of that. They're first class company, definitely. And so the big thing is, if an individual wants to become involved and they like to race, become involved with Racing for Orphans with Down syndrome. We'd love to have you on the team, love to get you involved. We have an incredible community. And in the end, you'd be racing for a cause. And there's no doubt that you would benefit from this as well.
And it really becomes the essence of a team when you have more members looking and trying to reach the same goal. It makes things easier for everybody, doesn't it?
No doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
The Rod Store, what's in there?
A lot of great things. When we started progressing as a team, and as people started to hear our story, I had a few shirts that I made just for some of my races and a little bit of apparel, and I had everybody saying, "Hey, I want one of those." And so we put together the Rod Store that has different shirts, adult sizes, kid sizes, different bracelets. We've got a custom-made head sweats visor that has actually Nash's footprint on the bill. It's great. And so people are able to support Rod's Racing by, number one, wearing the apparel, because it creates good talking points to share the story. Mm-hmm. But two, all of the proceeds actually go to the Rod's Orphan, who we're racing for at that time. So it's been a great win-win for raising awareness as well as the funding side.
It looks like you have really taken the time to focus on what's needed to achieve this accomplishment. And even though the matching donation is $50,000 from Idaho Potatoes, you don't stop there, right? I mean, you're going to continue this as long as you can.
Absolutely. We're hoping to max that out in the next month so we can continue on and keep advocating and keep raising money, because it's great to tell these kids' story, and it's awesome when you get their account up to that $15,000 or $20,000 mark, because it means you get to tell another story when that family comes forward to adopt them.
And just so that I'm clear and that all of our listeners are clear as well, you raise this money so that somebody has all of their costs taken care of to adopt that child. Is that correct?
Nope. Actually, We typically raise between $15,000 and $20,000 per child, and we still think it's important for the families to come forward and also fundraise and also have obviously have some sacrifice for this. And so on average, the international cost is between $30,000 and $40,000, and we typically raise around 50% of that. And so one of the questions I get a lot when raising money is people said, now, why does it cost so much to be able to adopt a child? It seems like they should make that easier. And the reality is where most of the cost comes is actually in the travel, as well as the preparation. There's a lot of background checks and so forth, but a lot of it comes from the travel. And so you imagine you're flying to Eastern Europe, and on average you have to go 3 times to be able to do different court proceedings and so forth with the adoption. And typically you have about a week's notice to book those flights. So imagine booking a flight to Eastern Europe for next week, and you and your spouse need to get over there, and then doing that 3 times. And while you're there, you have about a week to a week and a half stay, and the hotel and everything else that's accumulated with that. As you can see, it gets pretty expensive.
Well, you've utilized the sport of triathlon to accomplish this, and from everything that I've heard today from you, I commend you. I think that you're doing an incredible thing, not only for you personally, because you grow as a person, don't you? Especially when you have a child that has something that you're fighting for to help others.
You know, it's been interesting. All of this focus has been to be able to help these children, and I know that my teammates would echo this as well. We're sacrificing, people are donating, we're donating time and so forth, and it's all to be able to help this child. But I can say without a shadow of doubt that we are the ones that are benefiting the most. And I said this when I raced in Kona, and I'll say it many, many more times. It's not the child that's receiving the biggest blessing in this, believe it or not. It's the family that's going to get that child that receives the biggest blessing. And I feel as a racer and as an athlete, getting to race for these children, ultimately I'm the one that's benefiting the most by getting to be involved with this.
All right, as we're closing, people can get a hold of you in what ways?
The best way is to be able to visit our website. You can go to rodsracing.org. It's very thorough. There's all the stories of the children that we're racing for right now. We've got all the bios of all of our teammates on there right now. We keep it up to date, and as well, it's a way for you to be able to donate to the children that we're racing for at this time. All donations are tax deductible through the 501c3 side, and it works out very well for everybody.
And I think that's where we'll leave it, because you have inspired us to help you out, and we will continue to promote your story, promote Rods Racing, and anything else that we can do to help. The door is always open, and we'd love to have you back on, and other team mates of yours as we try to reach that goal and surpass it. How's that?
That would be great. You know, we actually have a fair amount of athletes that have actually adopted a child with Down syndrome that are racing for us, and their stories are even more incredible than mine. And so it'd be great to have them involved as well.
Indeed, we'd love to share that. Brady Murray, you're an incredible person. Thanks for joining us on Pace Per Mile.
At Pace Per Mile, we want to share your story. Do you know someone that has a compelling topic to share with the listeners? Help us tell your story or their story by emailing us today. info@pacepermile.com. That's info@pacepermile.com.